Para sa ating mga kapatid sa Visayas, maayong hapon, maupay nga kulop, maayong ugto. At para sa ating mga kapatid sa Mindanao, assalamualaikum at buenas tardes. Para sa ating mga panuhing banyaga, good afternoon, annyeonghaseyo, konnichiwa, salamat siyang, 𝗙𝗏. Welcome sa ating mga regular na tagapakinig at tagapanood dito sa Zoom at sa ating Facebook Live. Hello po sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Paul mula sa Future Earth Philippines. And ngayong hapon nga po ay nasa ika-38 o 38th episode na po tayo ng the Filipino Sustainable Development Goals or SDG Action Hour. Ito ang ating lingguhang kumustahan para sa maganda, maayos, mabuti at makabuluhang kinabukasan. Isang oras ng hitik na talakayan na naman po ng mga usaping napapanahon at nauugnay sa SDGs at sa ating bansa. And this afternoon, we are very honored to have with us two very special guests para i-discuss another exciting and interesting topic na pinamagatang Bioregn'l Resilience, Professional Coastal Resource Management or CRM Planning. And I am also very honored to introduce our amazing speakers. At sila po ay parehas na nagmula sa Daloy ng Buhay Incorporated or Daluhay. First in line, we have Dr. Paul David Watts, Daluhay's president. And Dr. Watts obtained his bachelor's degree in wildlife biology at the University of Guelph at kalaunan po ay nakuha naman niya kanyang doctorate degree sa University of Oslo in Norway with field of interest in polar bear energetics. Dr. Watts later worked at the Institute of Arctic Ecophysiology kung saan na na-develop nila ang ethnoecology program through the University of Manitoba. And this program ay involved po ang mga indigenous leaders bilang mga co-instructors. And in 2004, Dr. Watts decided to expand his reach and embark on a new journey at dito nga po ay natanggap siya sa Volunteer Services Overseas and that is when he started working in the Philippines. Next in line, we have Daluhay's Executive Director, Dr. 𝗙𝗶𝗶𝗶𝗃𝗏𝗏. So she obtained her doctorate on resource management and environmental studies at the University of British Columbia. At dito niya rin po nakilala si Dr. Watts. And prior to this, naging research assistant po si Dr. Pajaro sa University of the Philippines Marine Science Institute and later moved to Haribon Foundation para pangunahan ng ilang marine and terrestrial ecosystem-based endeavors na organisasyon. After completing her doctorate degree, bumalik po siya sa Pilipinas para naman pangunahan ang Aurora Marine Research and Development Institute. At sa kasalukuyan, ang focus nila Dr. Pajaro ay sa Ridge to Reef approach. That is by nurturing ecological and social networks to help provide supplemental livelihoods, para-professional trainings, and other capacity-building initiatives for local stakeholders. Let us not keep everyone waiting dahil alam kong excited na rin kayo tulad ko to listen and learn from our speakers. So this afternoon, we give you Dr. Paul David Watts and Dr. Maribik Pajaro.
At maraming salamat. Ang ganda naman na introduction. Paul din ba ang pangalan mo? So yeah, I'm very honored. We are very honored to be here. Thank you so much. And am I unmuted? I'm okay? Or
Yes, po. Yes, po.
Okay. So yeah, good to see all of you, and some are familiar. Of course, Dr. Luli and a few others. I guess I've met already. So pleased to meet you all. Shall we start already? Okay.
Yes, po. You can begin, po.
Is that good enough, Paul? Can everyone see it, or do I have to do the screen share again?
Please screen share po, Dr. Pajaro. Thank you po.
Uh-oh. What happened? Okay. Is that good?
Yes po. Pa-full screen na lang po ulit. Thank you po.
Okay. So yeah, thank you all for being here. And we'd like to share with you yung aming initiative on professional coastal resource management planning. This is, oops. Okay. This is what we have submitted to the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. There is an initiative there to contribute to the efforts for this Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, as this has been proclaimed by the UN very recently. And the adaptation strategies and science-informed policy responses to global climate change is urgently needed, and therefore we responded by submitting something to the UNESCO. So we received endorsement, and I will be asking Paul in a while to inform you all how we got through this process. But what we got endorsement from and what we submitted is what we are presenting today, the professional CRM planning for bioregional resilience. So for the next few minutes, what we'll be focusing on is what the direction we'd like to go for the next decade in response to this UNESCO call. So Paul will be explaining about this building partnership with the UN, and then the ridge to reef approach we're doing to build socio-ecological resilience, building the pilot bioregional approach in the North Philippine Sea, community-based efforts, and initiating the professional skills through TESDA for CRM, and building the municipal and provincial skills for CRM through the CRM Sining Bayan, or the Art of Nation Building, and how are the Luhai's board are engaged in this partnership building. So Paul, would you like to give more info on this?
Yes, thank you very much, Marivic, and it's great to be here. We had a little technical challenge in the beginning here. I always like to start off with mentioning to people that I did my doctorate on a typewriter. So the internet sometimes I find challenging, but great to have this venue set up and great to be involved. The Ocean Decade is a really unique approach to developing more sustainable approaches to our one ocean, sa lahat mundo. And it's not a project per se, it's a program of supported actions that span the country. And that's really span the country and span the world. So there's many different countries involved, but within our particular program, which is on sustainable fisheries, there's 4 different countries involved. One is Kenya, Puerto Rico, Spain, and the Philippines. So we've got 4 partners, and we've got an organizational group that's based in North America. And what the decade does is to facilitate the bringing together of potential partners to meet these huge goals that we've set up for here for 𝗙𝗏, for the Philippines, and for the other countries involved. And it's a really different approach rather than just having projects that are funded individually. It's looking at broad programs and how to support them through a network of highly skilled professionals around the world. So it's a really exciting time for us, and it's a real culmination of the work that we've done at 𝗙𝗏 and before, going back several decades. So we're really excited about this, and we decided to focus on this particular aspect of 𝗙𝗏 for our talk today. With that, I'll turn it back over to Marivic.
Thank you, Paul. So yeah, CRM, I think all of us, and it was alluded to earlier, is really about managing people and the human activities. And we, for example, we particularly would like to look at the community and the local fishers as critical to this, and that they are really the day-to-day managers of our coastal resources. And therefore, the ridge to reef approach is necessary, as you have also, as we have shown in the video presented a while ago. It's transdisciplinary, the inclusiveness, etc., is very much operating here. So as we have already know on this one, when we look at Ridge to Reef approach and building social ecological resilience, when there are typhoons, the government's response is to give boats. So for example, in the Typhoon Haiyan, so much boats were replaced because they felt that this is what the fishers needed. But underwater, there really was not a consideration. I know that there were some studies also on the impact of the typhoon, but then for management and for government responses, these are not looked at. And therefore, even for other management strategies, I think many of you also know in several areas, the mangroves are replacing our seagrass beds just to comply with the program of the government of the National Greening Program. So this is also happening here, and a lot of our seagrass beds have been also planted with mangroves already. So displacing them, and other poor strategies that doesn't really consider the integrated approach are being implemented. So for our case, we'd like to look at case studies where we consider the transdisciplinary and interoperable kind of strategies. So we, for example, had experience working with the agriculture side of ecosystem and connected to the coastal. So there is very clear connection, for example, with the maternal health. And therefore, in the next few years of this ocean science, the decade of ocean science, we'd like to look into food security and how this can be planned in such a way that it considers the food systems as a whole, where maybe one community doesn't have to rely so much on imports, but they can be sustaining themselves. Well, for building the bioregional approach to the North Philippine Sea as a third sort of direction for this ocean science decade, we would like to look at the North Philippine Sea as a case study where you have the pelagic fishery as really an important resource. So we have our blue marlin and our other pelagic fishery as the tuna as a very important commercially traded species. However, the nearshore offshore connectivity isn't really that clear. There's so much fish aggregating devices in the commercial waters at the moment, and there are commercial also payaos, small scale payaos even in the municipal waters. But it has been mentioned that a lot of the commercial fishing vessels have already encroached the 10-kilometer municipal waters. And in fact, there are some moves by commercial fishers, sabi nila madami daw fishes pa dito sa municipal waters, so they should be allowed to fish in the nearshore or within the municipal waters. So these are a point of contentions, and we'd like to be engaging our fishers here, collecting data as well, how they're really affected by the commercial fishers wanting to encroach in the municipal waters. We also are looking at establishment of marine protected areas in the side of Aurora. There are several and are proposed. And we are also looking at the turtle nesting sites, how this can be networked, and we are looking at building a social network among fishers and also among the MENRO and the MAO, among the local governments. So there have been some ongoing discussions, and scaling this up from the municipal to the provincial, and then hopefully to the North Philippine Sea. This has been initiated by MERV when we had the Small Grants Program, fifth phase, I think way back in 2017. But there was pandemic and we also didn't have enough funding anymore. Hopefully we could, through this decade of ocean science and building partnerships, we could find resources where we can build this network again along the North Philippine Sea of around 10 provinces. We also have to look into the cultural values. So you mentioned earlier about resilience, also taking into consideration not just the ecological, biological, but also the social, cultural. And we were able to do some interviews among fishers throughout the North Philippine Sea. And it seems that a lot of them still strongly agree that the sea has inexhaustible resources. Hindi daw mauubos ang ating marine resources. So given that, with that understanding as well, or considering that, what can we do as we do our education, communication, and the management and planning for coastal resources? And particularly since we are talking here also of pelagic fishery, then the interconnection in different provinces also have to be considered if fisher folk across bioregions are thinking the same. So we are now looking into certifying CRM coastal management services through TESDA. So we know that fishers, for example, have abilities, and a lot of those working in the local governments have those abilities for planning and management. But we need to build their capacities and their capabilities become competent so they can deliver the services. This has been an obstacle in CRM implementation, as already reported since way back in 2002, that there is lack of expertise and staff training really in the offices of the Municipal Agriculture Office or the Municipal Environment Natural Resources Office. They mostly have agriculturists or foresters, but CRM specialists are not really in their offices. So this has been the same concern even in Aurora. So hopefully with the test who have the ability to also engage themselves or contribute to CRM services. We were able to journey to the prioritization of the community-based coastal resource management with TESDA, and Dr. Luli, thank you for the support. She has been with us from almost the start. No? So we need to be prioritizing the curriculum, the training regulations, development has to be prioritized. So this is drafted, validated, and then promulgated, and then implemented. So it has been prioritized. There was drafting with TESDA, and there was validation, but we still lack that area of competency that needs to be done further. So in other words, we're not there yet for the promulgation of the TESDA National Board for CRM to be nationally certified. So yeah, this is the long process of training regulations development that we underwent. And thank you to those who have submitted or given their endorsements. Without these endorsements, Future Earth was among those who endorsed the training regulations development for CRM. And that's why that has been prioritized by the TESDA. So they have funds for having the training regulations, and there are drafts now, and the implementation is still a challenge. Although TESDA said that we could do it on the provincial level, but it will be called non-TR, meaning to say it is not recognized as nationally certified. So the CRM Siningbayan is among the tools that is in the CRM service training regulation curriculum. So we worked with the group of Joey Ayala called the Bagong Lumad Artists Foundation Incorporated, or BLAFI. And this is Siningbayan is the art of nation building. And we were able to have Joey Ayala come to Aurora and work with indigenous peoples, with fishers, to get their concept of CRM and also use approaches, social artistry approaches to plan and communicate CRM. So just to show you the process of developing the training regulations, we had to have several meetings with TESDA and the TESDA board. The presence of Dr. Luli Cruz was very much appreciated here. And we did some formulation and validation workshops, even during the pandemic, so it was mostly online. So we now have this training regulations draft for data collection services, which is given a level of national certification 3, level 3. Coastal Resources Communication Development Services, and resource profiling and networking services. These are all useful for planning. And we did also this social artistry approach with a group called PAMANA, Pambansang Alyansa, ng mga nangangalaga ng santuario sa Pilipinas. It was active probably more than a decade ago, and we're trying to revive this group who are really pushing for community-based marine protected area management. The training for the CRM services has this vision mission, sustainable management of our coastal resources for food and livelihood security, as well as environmental integrity. And this is all equal to resilience. So linking of CRM management from bridge to reef is considered. And this is what we will be promoting for up to 2030, contributing to our sustainable development goals, primarily poverty and etc. As you can see here, this is all what we are hoping to contribute to CRM education. And when we do the data collection, then there will be measurable improvements, and hopefully this CRM Siningbayan can also be a way of getting a diploma program and replicated, not just here in Aurora, as we are trying to really have the province support this, provide scholarships. Although TESDA said that if it is already promulgated nationally, then they can also provide some support. So this is so far what we are hoping to do up to 2030, and I will let Paul give some inputs on how our board of directors and the UN can be engaged as well.
Thank you very much, Marivic. It's always great to listen through that and imagine where we're going and reflect on where we've been. The whole process that 𝗙𝗏𝗻 has gone through to get this far was really complex and it was really problem based, and we had to continue to pivot as needed. One of the parts that's developed in a very interesting way has been the whole creation and renewal of our board of directors. We have what we call a working board of directors. So the board members themselves are connected to individual staff members and or projects and or partnership development. And they actually are active in the development of the vision, mission, goals of the organization. And so we have associate board members in several countries. We have a core of Philippine board members, and we here in Aurora province. And that's a really important part of how we've developed, is because we're not a large organization. When every time I look at the presentations, it makes me think that we're really quite big, but we're not. We're really quite small. And why we've been able to do what we've done is to build partnerships within the organization, within the communities we serve, and within the organizations external to the province and the Philippines that have parallel goals to that of 𝗙𝗏𝗻. So it's a really complex approach involving all of the local government units here in Aurora and extending across the northern Philippine Sea. We've worked with every provincial government in the 10 provinces, with perhaps 40 municipalities spread out over that area. And we continue to develop those partnerships. When along the way, we pick up some terms that we've hung on to. And what we find is that sometimes terminology comes and goes, it becomes popular, and then it's changed for something else. But this whole idea of ridge to reef is really, really been pivotal for us in terms of focusing how we look at biodiversity, how we look at sustainable communities, and how we work on resilience. And as we've been able to do those pivots, we've picked up things such as the idea of harmonizing goals. So looking at developing common goals for our common future, right down to within municipalities, across the province, across the northern Philippine Sea, and across sa lahat mundo. So with the United Nations Decade on Ocean Science, and also with the Government of Canada and Saskatchewan Polytechnic University, where we have another new project on geospatial approaches and how to apply those in artisanal and indigenous communities. We're really reaching out and develop international partnerships that can help set these models in action here in Belair, here in Aurora, here in the Philippines, but also connecting to what's needed around the world. And it's a really, really exciting time for us, and we're always looking for new partners, new engagements. And just in closing, I'd like to thank you all for joining us on this Friday afternoon, and I look forward to talking with you individually in the future whenever we get the chance. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. We didn't make our presentation long, as we wanted it more interactive. And if you have questions, then we'd very much welcome that. So thank you so much for inviting us over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marivic and Dr. Paul, for this very informative presentation. The floor is now open for questions from our panelists and our participants. So we have one question already. Actually, this is from Mr. 𝗥𝗲𝗂𝗶𝗃𝗃. He asked, why TESDA and why not CHED? Because TESDA is only vocational and technical. Dr. Marivic.
Yeah, you can add, Paul. Yeah, we were really looking this to be community-based, but later on, get it to the diploma level where 𝗙 can be engaged. But we would like fishers, for example, they've been doing it. We have participatory coastal resource assessments, and we get them to collect data when we want to monitor their marine protected areas. So why not give them certification? So they can be high school graduates or even elementary level, but if they have the capacity to read and write and do simple math, then they have data collection service certification. Then they can do another certification for the networking and profiling and the communication development. Then if they pass all that, they can go to the diploma level, and this is where perhaps 𝗙 can be already engaged. So in fact, we are also looking at talking with academic colleges, universities, so that this can be also part of their program.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that, the model that we're following is very much like engineering, where engineering is certainly well embedded in 𝗙, but also well embedded in TESDA, providing specific skills, and specific skills in this case that the LGUs need. And that's more it is a technical approach, it is a vocational approach. And part of what we're doing is to link this endeavor to similar endeavors around the world, looking at how to set up specific skills on socio-ecological systems to manage them in a sustainable way.
Thank you po. We would like to recognize Sir Doy. Your hands are raised po. Sir Doy, you're recognized po. For a moment po. Sir Doy?
Yes, good afternoon. I like the, can you hear me?
Yes po.
Okay, Marivic and Paul, I like your presentation very much. I am a fan of Reach to Reef. I thought that is especially made for archipelagos, and we used to call it a wedge concept, where each island is divided almost like a pizza pie from the tip of the island to the coastal area. Now, I am teaching a course on inclusive cities and introduction to urban and regional development in Ateneo, and we are also doing inclusive transportation and mobility management. I was thinking that we are too land-oriented, and maybe this is a good time to introduce our students to coastal and marine. And I know that you're trying to do this with TESDA. I agree with that approach. The MC2, MC3 is really needed, and many people don't realize that that is really the way to go. But I thought that if we introduce this among our students, and Ateneo has been very hospitable to new courses. In case of my Department of Development Studies. Well, it's really just a program now. But would you be interested to develop something like that? It's something we can do, I hope, within the year or something.
Of course, yes. Of course. And you know what? Now we are doing this urban greening initiative also, and it is in the policy of the government right now to also in their Philippine Development Plan, right? That they're promoting urban greening, and a lot of our municipalities are coastal, so they have to think of the connection of the land and the sea. So yes, a lot of the sewage problem, the yeah, it all comes out that it really has to be reached to approach. So yes, we'll be very interested to develop something with your institution, and we'll keep in
Yes,
touch.
Yes, we will get in touch. I work with Doc Luli in Future Earth. This is our actual project, this SDG Hour. We also have a university's SDG Action Network. You might be interested to know. And we have a memorandum of understanding with 3 universities, Cavite State for Luzon, Western Visayas for Visayas, and the Mindanao State University, Iligan Institute of Development. So we have this SDG, Universities SDG Action Network. And what we really wanted to do was to bring the universities closer to LGU so that they can bring their knowledge into local problem solving. We thought, and so we are doing this now in Pampanga and Bulacan. We're looking at their submerged coastal areas. We've been there 3 times already over the past 2 weeks. Doc Luli, as you know, despite her age, is very energetic. So we've studied that. I saw it on television last night. The Sumilaw flooding. Actually, that's where we were last week. So and I'm mentioning it because it's turning out to be a flagship project of FEP, and I know that the perspectives and approaches that you have developed are really applicable to that. And of course, that adds to mangroves and also the inter-river basin interaction. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I think in the development of the curriculum, we very much want to be in touch with you.
Yes,
so,
yes.
We have a rich curriculum.
Yes, thank you. Doc Luli and I will be in touch.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you very much, Sir Loy. We still have questions in our chat Q&A box from Sir Simeon Miklay. So he said that DNR is also espousing the Ridge to Reef approach and have this coastal and marine ecosystem management program. Is the CRM related or similar?
Oh, in terms of the concept and also the strategies, we have no conflict. In fact, we got their endorsement for this 𝗙𝗏 curriculum development training regulations, and we work with them at the local level. So it is not totally different, perhaps just the additional approach of educating our engaging, including our fishers in the communities to get some education and be more engaged in the planning process, not just as observers, listeners, but an opportunity for them to be facilitating the planning and collecting the data in a way that is standardized and professionalized.
Okay po. Another question po from Sir 𝗙𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃. Why rely so much on LGUs? There is more brain power in NGOs and SUCs.
Say that again. I think I missed some points. Can you please repeat?
He's asking if why are you relying mostly on LGUs? There are more brain power in NGOs and SUCs.
You want to answer?
Well, I think it's really important to look under the local government code and really see how the municipalities are the ones that have the responsibility for the fisheries and the coastal resource management. That's where we want to improve the skills that are available to the system. Now that may mean, and we're very much involved with this, going in and taking individuals and helping them ladder into new areas, even engaging them as instructors in their areas of expertise. But the big thing is to try to get out and engage the people themselves that are the direct beneficiaries, because by doing that, we're really cutting back on the need for the concept of enforcement, but rather it's collaboration, participation, and co-management. But it comes back to the LGU's mandate within the local government code. That's why we focus on that.
Yeah, I think I'll add that, yeah, in the governance framework, there should be inclusivity. And right now, I'm actually impressed that the DILG is really urging the local governments to engage CSOs. And we're being invited in a lot of planning sessions. So we also need to build the capabilities of our CSOs and the POs, no, our community-based organizations, so they can engage in this governance process. So it's not to say we're relying on the government, but maybe in strengthening governance in this manner. But we recognize they have resources, so at least they can also provide support by giving financial scholarships, for example. But in fact, in our piloting, the local government wanted their staff to be, they were job JOs, they were on job orders, but they wanted their staff to be trained as well on CRM. So yeah, I think it's not really relying so much on them, but building also the capabilities.
Thank you po. Now we would like to recognize Mr. Cesar Gomez. Sir Cesar, go ahead po.
Marivic and Paul, thank you very much for an informative and interesting presentation. Two items, two questions. One, I'm interested on the forces supporting and opposing. My naive or rough interpretation is that the big fishers in the local area are the ones perhaps being problem people. And to the extent that they influence the LGUs, then there's that problematic setup. I recall I was in an island before the COVID, okay? And I asked the fishermen what are the problems they're facing, and they said they've got the Vietnamese, in fact, well, I don't want to mention it, foreign trawlers out there, you know. And by the time they call the Coast Guard, and by the time the Coast Guard comes, nakaalis na yung the foreign fishers have left. You know? So I'm trying to get a sense of the extent, well, the nature, the type, and the extent of the forces, people, or groups not supporting CRM. Okay, that's one side. The other is, are you reaching out in the local area to schools, religions, and all that to deepen the support aside from the fishermen? Okay, so that's my first question. I'll have the second question afterwards. You may want to answer that first.
Yeah, it's really challenging, no? So many stakeholders are involved. So yeah, in terms of trying to reach out different stakeholders, that's why a network is important. Lalo na itong Vietnamese halimbawa, or not just them, but encroachers, yung commercial fishers. Bago pa sila, so municipal waters, dapat ang munisipyo daw ang may doon, sa kanilang waters, may jurisdiction and authority over that. Pero pag pumunta, nakarating na siya sa ibang munisipyo, hindi mo na siya pwedeng hulihin. May ganon. So dapat kasama si Coast Guard at dapat may connect din sila dun sa kabila para sila naman yung manghuhuli, kasi may mga ganong pangyayari, no? So kaya mahalaga yung nagne-network din yung mga enforcers, siguro lalo na sa local yung mga fishers, no? Meron kasi sila yung nandun sa dagat din. So pero you have to equip them. May mga rin sila dapat, radio, mga ganon, no? So mahalaga siguro yung pag-uusap, yung communication, tsaka yung mechanism. In that sense, doon siguro makakatulong kami in terms of facilitation. Pero yung talagang nasa ground ka, hindi namin yun kakayanin as an NGO, but we can help facilitate the discussion of these problems and what they can do. So sa planning process, then yung quick response, ano ba? At Meron ngayon silang tinatawag pa ngang IUUF task force. So, nasa batas siya, dapat suportahan yon. So, yung mga ating sangguniang bayan and sila dapat din yung magpupush nito. So, different levels po ng pakikibaka din dito sa ating CRM. So, pero yung deepening support is important.
You're not the only group espousing CRM, ano?
No.
Is there a federation of NGOs or groups like you nationwide? Because I think that's the strength there. Is there such a federation?
For CRM, long time ago, there were efforts, lalo na kasi yung funding for coming together, no? But there is a CSO network. At saka yung may mga group of people's organizations, no? NACFAR, I forgot what NACFAR is, but especially ngayon daw ang ating fisheries code ay may mandatory review. So they are discussing this, and they need really technical information din, no, to back up yung kanilang mga gustong isulong. So may efforts on the part of dito sa mga POs na mag-get together, and then nakalink yung mga NGOs dito sa mga PO din so far. So, pero right now, I myself am not engaged itong sa CRM malakihang network, pero it exists informally.
Second question, if Paul will allow me. No, second question. Fishers are supposed to be the poorest of the poor in the agricultural code. Looking forward into terms of population over time, how do you see the children of the fishers, going about? Will they continue fishing, or will they take up computer science or whatever? Or they will, so that's my concern, because I'm trying to imagine really the succeeding generation in the poorest of the poor area. Thank you.
Can I do? That's a really good question, and one that we asked to the fisher folk from Batanes to Sorsogon when we did our cultural research, and the responses came back with some really interesting points of view. A lot of fishermen were supportive of the idea of their children being fisher folk, but they wanted them to get some kind of certification or diploma so that they could be recognized for their expertise. And that was a consensus all across the 10 provinces. It was like they were all in the same room and having a party. They all agreed on that, and that was really stunning. And then something else popped up that was really interesting, in that the fisher women, or the women of fisher folk families, were not in favor of the children becoming fishermen or fisher folk. And we delved into that further, and as you know, that whole question of poverty is a really big one. And although childhood malnutrition is considered to be endemic in the country, it's really most pronounced in the fisherfolk communities. And the whole provision of food to the children, and going right back to the mother, is something we started to look at, and we found there's some real holes in nutrition in the fisherfolk community, where individual families and groups of families, and sometimes whole communities, will fall between the cracks during the maternal period, where the amount of protein they're getting dips way down below the recommendations by Philippine standards or international standards. So one of the things we've done, and we were pleased to have our approach actually showcased by the World Health Organization, is develop the idea of maternal reserves, and in a marine sense, and even now in a terrestrial sense, where we prioritize those areas, prioritize the needs of mothers, pregnant and lactating mothers. And I think that that may help to address the concerns that women have about the future of their children as fisherfolk. But there's within the fisherfolk community, we experienced in our research such a deep connection, a generational connection. It's artisanal, but it goes back in a very indigenous way to times long before we can talk about, and that continues on. The fisherfolk of the Philippines have always been such a strong part of the culture, and even those that aren't fisherfolk anymore. I watch them out fishing with their rods and reels and catching very little, but really dedicated to connecting back into that part of the culture. So I think it's a question of how we support that culture so that that culture and that harvest and that way of life can support the food security of the Philippines.
Paul, can I still ask, Paul?
Yes po, Sir Cesar, go ahead.
I might be. Let me reverse the situation. I think from before you can identify the top 10 fishes, produced or whatnot. What if people like you or groups like you think, what does it take? What will it take to produce the volumes needed for the global market? So it's a reversal, because my experience is that NGOs focus on their respective communities. Fine. But for me, the way I'd like to approach it is, what does the global market need? And then break down. On the land, in terms of land-based, limited situation, you've got Jollibee and McDonald's tying up with farmers. So perhaps if we expand the orientation a bit and think of the fishes, especially the fishes abundant in your areas, North Philippines and all that, and really take on a hat of being big, I think this will give some guidance to groups like you, because my concern is that if you just keep on looking at the poor fishers, you might get stuck there. But if you're open to something like Jollibee or McDonald's, I mean, I don't know. I think Century Fishing or whatnot, I suspect there might be groups also that are big and linking up with fishers. I think that's a faster way to get out of the rut. Thank you.
Yeah, I think those kinds of associations fit really well into our open door policy about developing partnerships around food systems. And the best way to start on that is at the community level, because when you start at the larger level, you lose connection to the communities and how they actually survive. So the idea, and Sicto Rojas is really big on this, the idea of having sustainability within a small geographic area and then looking at export potential. And so we're very much interested in the sustainability of the resources. So and that's why going bioregional is so critical, especially in the North Philippine Sea, because the 10 provinces share the same pelagic fish stocks. And so looking at that from a sustainability standpoint, and then what is available for export, and at the same time looking at food systems and the health of the communities, then start to work in towards the bigger centers. And that process will take a long time to get to Manila. Manila's, 10, 15 million people? It's a huge challenge. But on a national level, if we start to look at sustainability, and then we can start to build partnerships like Jollibee, like other big organizations that are interested in the stable economy and in stable food systems for the country. So that's how our approach is going at this time. Certainly Punti-Unti.
Yeah.
Sir Cesar, do you still have follow-up questions or are you good with
There's
the
a chat
answers?
question. There's a chat question. I have a question. I have suggestion, but there's a question in the chat box.
Okay po, before we proceed po to Sir Cesar, let me just read first the question of Sir 𝗙𝗃𝗃 again. How are you able to coordinate with BIFAR, ALG, MSIP, and even PCG?
A lot of work.
Work. And well, it also needs resources, right? So sometimes we're the ones to initiate. There is this, for example, when we had marine protected areas, there were issues, and we had funding to bring together these people. So we are able to talk to each other. And BIFAR also actually now with their fisheries management area focus, they are doing planning also, I think. So they invite us, and we get to share also information, and we get to know what's happening, and we get to engage in the discussion. And we work together, for example, when we assess, we do as a local government would want to establish a protected area, they request for assistance for inventory or resource assessments. We have created here we call them technical working group. So the members there are from the academe, from DNR, from BIFAR. And so we get together for that. The Coast Guard, they come in the picture when there is a meeting of, let's say, the task force, illegal, unreported, unregulated fisheries, because that's, and also the mpharmcy, Municipal Fisheries Agriculture Council, we're member of that. So through those kinds of mechanisms, we are able to communicate.
And question din po from Ma'am Maria Cecilia Almeda. I'd like to know if mitigation strategies of potential impacts of climate change is integrated in the Coastal Resources Management Program to ensure the long-term sustainability of coastal ecosystems.
We work both on mitigation and adaptation, and both are really important. The Philippines is blessed with an opportunity to contribute hugely to the mitigation of climate change, not by the size of the country, but by the quality of the carbon sequestration in the forest systems. And that's where our ridge to reef comes in terms of looking at carbon sequestration, how it applies to the forest, and down into the agricultural area and out into the coastal areas. So, and that I think is, I think of him as the brother I never met. Dr. Perry Ong was a real leader in biodiversity for the Philippines. And one of his priorities was the role of watersheds and how they really feed biodiversity from the ridge down into the reef. The whole system feeds, the water feeds the biodiversity, or to steal from the 𝗙𝗏𝗏, it's the flow of life. And I think that's a really important way of looking at how we work on climate change and try to mitigate it. In terms of adaptation, changes are occurring. And to measure those changes, we need skilled individuals who can collect data at the community level, at the municipal level, and then organize that so that it can be built into training and coordination projects at the provincial level and planning. Yeah. So that's the path that we're on, taking little steps along the way.
But let me add that right now the municipalities are required, or there are incentives also being given by the government to develop this municipal development risk reduction management, so for climate change, and we are able to give inputs on that. So in that way, they are able to really do some planning, and the technical assistance for having a good plan is making informed decisions is also how we're able to help our government, local government, and our community-based organizations.
Back to you, Sir Cesar, your suggestions or comments. Thank you for the answers.
Just one suggestion, since Doc Luli is here. 2 Fridays ago, Dr. 𝗙𝗶𝗶𝗶𝗽𝗶 gave us a talk. Dr. 𝗙𝗶𝗶𝗶𝗶𝗽 is with the Farmer Scientist Training Program. And because either Marivic or Paul mentioned about the fisher folks looking for certification. What Dr. 𝗙𝗶𝗶𝗶𝗽 has been tying up with young farmers, no read, no write, did not finish grade school. But he developed a curriculum for them. There's a phase 1 wherein they're given the basics of science for crops and animals. Phase 2 is they try it out in their own farm. And phase 3, they teach others. For phase 1, phase 3, those who finish phase 1, I think, get a certification signed by the 𝗙𝗵𝗶𝗃. I don't know if it's the chancellor or dean. So imagine a no read, no write farmer boy finishing phase 1 gets a certification. And if he finishes phase 3, teaching others, I think he gets a certificate of recognition. Again, signed by the 𝗙𝗵𝗶𝗃 chancellor or dean, you know. So I think this is a boost, and I'd like to mention it to Marivic and Paul that this might be something, you know, and Dr. Lulu will know more about Dr. 𝗙𝗶𝗶𝗃. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the information.
Sir Cesar, yes po, Ma'am Luli.
Yeah, just about the FSTP program of Dr. 𝗙𝗶𝗶𝗃. Yeah, it's tying up with the university, who is very supportive and, you know, in giving, I think it's the dean that who signs the certificates. And I don't know if you can tie up with the Aurora Ascot, with the new president of Ascot, maybe it's possible.
Yeah, for as a diploma course. Yeah, we have plans of doing that.
And we still have questions po from, I would just some feedback muna po in the Q&A box. First is from Ma'am Maria Cecilia Almeida. Thank you very much, though we need to reinforce yet our LGU in the context of ridge-to-reef approach, which is our usual bottleneck. And from Ma'am Violeta Villegas, she said that for information, Dr. Perry Ong of UP Diliman passed away a couple of years ago. I wonder who took over his projects. Now proceeding po. Yes po, Sir 𝗙𝗂𝗃𝗍𝗃, you are recognized.
Some universities are still giving AA, Associate in Arts, for the first 2 years in college. And then after that, they can proceed to AB of the same course or another subject. Maybe that's an idea to pursue.
Yeah, noted po. We will.
I think there are, and we've known about other pockets of systems. What the 𝗙𝗃𝗃 approach does is it brings us into the the international TBET system, and where we can certify specific skills and build programs around specific skills. And I think that's really the advantage of the 𝗙𝗃𝗃 approach.
Well, another possibility is give them computer literacy, especially the kids of the fisher folk.
Yeah, that's the curriculum. They actually have that like as additional skills and is offered, and they have certainly, especially for this young generation.
Yeah, because even if they work from home, for example, they can still be fisher folk.
Right.
Yeah.
They can have a dual job.
Right.
As long as the internet is good. But nowadays, that's possible.
It's getting there, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you po, Sir 𝗙𝗃𝗃𝗍𝗃. We have a comment from Sir Rafael Guerrero. One of the major challenges of CRM is sustainable livelihoods like sea farming to reduce fishing pressure and increase income of fisherfolk.
Right.
Do we still have questions po from our panel and our participants? Yes po, Doc, you are recognized po.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Narinig ko kanina na may nagsabi na fishermen are the poorest of the poor. So anong steps na ba or programs nagawa or you recommend para naman aangat ang buhay ng mga mangingisda?
Sa mga usapin pong yan, when we do the planning, kasi mas facilitator yung role namin. So, nababanggit yung issue na yon, and then we do yung SWOT analysis and then the planning and ano yung kailangan ni fisher para umangat yung buhay niya will come from them, and then how they will change that situation, kailangan pagtulungan. So may idea sila paano, and then yung idea na yun kung paano, mayroon ding mga inputs actually from, let's say, BIFAR or DNR and the local government. And then yung paano mo talaga magagawa yon, it has to be, for example, may samahan sila para mas matulungan sila. So, kailangan mo i-build din yung kanilang samahan. Kasi kung kailangan na resources, mas samahan kaysa individual binibigay. Yung mga ganon. So, kasama po siya dun sa Coastal Resource Management Plan na gagawin.
Kasi matagal ko nang naririnig yung mangingisda ay ang pinakamahirap na sektor ng ating society. And hanggang ngayon, yung pa rin ang naririnig o sinasabi. Second na yata yung coconut farmers, di ba? Pero bakit ganun? Hindi pa rin umangat ang buhay nila. Yet, ang daming mga programs, mga climate change na pinagkakagastusan, mga kung ano-ano, but still the problem is there. So, I don't know. Tinatanong ko lang yan dahil every time na may mga ganitong gatherings or events or what, maririnig natin yan na ang mangingisda ay ang pinakamahirap na sektor. So, how long we keep on hearing this? 50 years from now, still?
I think
sinasabi natin pinakamahirap pa rin sila.
I think one of the ways that we're approaching that what seems to be a never-ending challenge is to do something that perhaps is going to help in the long term, and that's through our work with Joey Ayala and the 𝗥𝗲𝗀𝗶𝗴𝗃 Artist Foundation, and bringing 𝗙𝗡𝗏𝗏 or social artistry into coastal resource management creates a whole different forum that opens the door to youth, to very young children, to all ages, all groups of people to be involved in an artistic approach to a solution. And I talked before about partnerships, and I left out this one, which is, I believe, the most important one that 𝗙𝗏𝗏𝗃 has put forward, and I believe it's our one of our main leading points in an international sense, is bringing together arts and science in such a way that we tap the great resource of the Philippines, which is the people themselves. And the people themselves are extremely emotive. And we need to engage that part of the culture to bring out the problems and bring out the solutions and bring out the partnerships to solve things together. So, I loved the introduction to the show today when they referred to the music and the art. I think that's a real key point. And we have to, as Stephen Covey would say, we have to keep our compass focused on where we're going and just keep moving 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and pivot as we need with the people that we're talking to and with new groups that we come in contact with.
Thank you.
Thank you po, Doc. Before I call, sir, I just want to read the comment of Ma'am Maria Cecilia Almeda. She said that thank you for sharing your advocacy. Now po, yes po, Sir Alex, you are recognized.
Marivic and Paul, I think you really have to identify the right person at the LGU level, because there are environment officers, compliance officers, agricultural officers, and there are so many of them. And whenever there is a meeting, some of them would attend, some would not. And every time there is a meeting, a different representative would show up. And then by the next meeting, another one would show up. And none of them are reporting back to their bosses. And no one is submitting reports. No one seems to be accountable. And you cannot even search the reports, not even in social media. So we really don't know what's happening. And I don't know if they're being rated or if there's a feedback system for that. So that's what I mean. You really have to identify the right guy. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, opo, totoo yan. At minsan nga, the MAU and the MENRO, pagka daw bigayan na livelihood, MAU. Pero paghulihan, MENRO. So, parang kontrabida palagi si MENRO. So, sila mismo may internal conflict at ano. But that is as far as working with LGU is concerned. Ang ano rin naman ay you work also directly with the communities kasi nga ang hirap katrabaho minsan, lalo na pag may change in administration, yung iba na naman yung kausap mo, no, or hindi priority ni mayor ngayon yung dati priority ni mayor kasi ano nga siya, no, ayaw niya ma-identify dun sa dating project ni mayor. So may mga ganon. Kaya maganda din talaga may base dun sa community na yung samahan or mga network mo doon, kikilos sila kahit wala si LGU. So may mga opportunities, for example, itong small grants program, phase 7 or kahit yung mga dati, they support community-based organizations. They can implement their projects themselves na hindi kailangan ng ni mayor, ng basbas ni mayor o ni MAU o ni MENRO. So I think we also have to look at different levels na tutulungan mo yung mga kailangan tulungan.
Thank you very much po for that. We still have 2 questions. Apologies po, but for the time constraints, we will be just answering the last 2 questions. So we have one from the chat box and one from an anonymous attendee. I'll just go po first with a question of Sir Rafael Guerrero. Are the poor fisher folk among the beneficiaries of the government's 4Ps program?
As far as I know, most of them are, especially yung may anak na pinapag-aral. Pag graduate na yung mga anak nila o ano ganon, hindi na nag-aaral, hindi sila beneficiary. So I know for a fact also that some of the 4Ps beneficiaries have been organized at minsan tinutulungan sila ng pandagdag, no? And in fact, dapat gawing leverage na kayo ay binibigyan ng suporta. So dapat hindi kayo nag-get into activities na, for example, illegal. So, nasusumbong yung mga ganon, no? So, nakakatulong din in a way. At yun, pag may nag-aaral, doon kasama ang mga 4Ps natin na beneficiaries.
And for the last question po from an anonymous attendee. Ang aming Coastal Resource Management Development Program ay madaming input program for the nearby coastal area, pero it is not effective. How and what are the possible activity to make community participate in such program, and does it mean na walang bisa ang program na ipinapatupad?
Tough question.
Go ahead, Marivic.
Maraming ganyan din dito, no? So, bawa may ginawang plano for 3 years or 5 years, yung umpisa maganda pero nga yun nagpalit ng ng administrasyon, so hindi hindi siya naging effective talaga. So ano nga yung mga pwedeng gawin ay nasa ano talaga din sino yung mga gumawa nun. So, sometimes for our part, pwede naming, kung lalapit, o minsan kinakausap namin, yun nga, bawa yung samahan, gusto nila. So, we help them make proposals, for example, paano, pero hanggang doon lang sa part ng plano na concerned sila. Hindi yung buong coastal resource management plan. So, yun, titingnan, kasi nakakatulong yung plano. When they submit a proposal, they can refer to the plan, and that has my points siya, no, for the proposal to be accepted or funded, kasi may basis, hindi lang siya biglang sa isip na ganon. So, yun, in that way, makakatulong. Kaya maganda yung may engagement talaga. Kasi nakaka-relate yung, kung barangay man yan, si barangay kasi pwede rin sa level nila magpondo sila, hindi lang sa munisipyo.
Thank you very much po. So before I give the floor to Ma'am Luli, I just want to highlight na for me, my takeaway here would be, in order to attain sustainability, we must empower the members of the community. So that is where we truly give them a better future. Thank you po. Ma'am Luli, do we have words po for Dr. Marivic and Dr. Paul?
Yes, maraming salamat sa inyo, Paul.
Thank you rin po for inviting us.
We've been, have known them for a long time since they started the 𝗙𝗂𝗁, and such a big accomplishment since then. I'm really amazed at what you have reached at this point. Being endorsed by the UN Decade of the Ocean, and your programs with 𝗙𝗫𝗏 and other things also. So, I salute your efforts, the 𝗙𝗂𝗁, Marivic, and Paul. Thank you very much for coming and talking about your experience here in the SDG Action Hour.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
We're honored.
It's our honor too.
Yes po, that concludes our session for this afternoon. Again, thank you very much po, Dr. Marivic and Dr. Paul, for a very enriching discussion this afternoon. And to our participants, if you want to get your certificates, please accomplish the evaluation form already in the chat box. And join us again next Friday for another hour of discussion about sustainable development goals. Thank you so much po, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
weekend.
you.
Bye.
Bye now.